Hello and good afternoon. So according to my clock, it's 5 o'clock. Let's give it a few more minutes before we get started so a few more can join us for the book reading this afternoon. So more people are coming slowly but surely. Put your name in the message box. Let me see who's here. Oh, hi, Daphne. Thanks so much for joining us all the way from Dunleary in Dublin, Ireland. Good to see you. I know it's really late, so I sincerely appreciate your joining me. Who else is here? Please put a message in the message box. Let me know who is joining us. If you can comment. So we'll just give 2 more minutes and then we'll get started. We have a really sunny afternoon here in Toronto for a change. Now it got a little cooler, but still brilliant sunshine this afternoon compared to the rain yesterday. I got drenched in the rain. I was taking an early morning walk. What was a sunny morning, and all of a sudden a cloud just passed and I got drenched and there was nowhere to shelter, so I walked home in the rain. Luckily the rain wasn't too cold. So it was warm-ish rain, so it wasn't too bad. All right, so I'll give 1 more minute. I see a few people are joining us. If you'd like to comment in the comment box, please let me know who you are, who has joined us. Yes, so 1 more minute and then we'll get started. Welcome so much to Facebook Live at 5 and book readings with Jennylynd. So happy you could be here this afternoon. Right, so what I'd like to do this afternoon is read from one of my favorite books. Oh, hi, Gloria. So happy you could join us this afternoon. This afternoon, I'm going to read from a memoir called Red Car, Long Legs, Adventures in California and Beyond. For those who don't know, I'll just tell you about some of the books I've written. Now, I've worked and lived in 4 different countries. And I wrote a memoir based on all the various places where I've lived. Each place I've written a memoir so far. So the first one I did was Escape from Ireland, because I'd moved to Toronto from Ireland and I miss Ireland so much that I had to write about Ireland. I just couldn't get Ireland out of my head. So in 2013, I published this book. Now, moving to Toronto was quite an event, and it was quite a culture shock. And I wrote about the culture shock in a book I call Goodbye Frying Pan, Hello Fire. Because when I left Dublin, it was the height of the recession and things were a bit crazy, and I had a business there, lost the business. So moving to Toronto, without knowing anybody and no job, it was quite a feat. And I wrote this memoir as a form of healing. I put it that way. Goodbye Frying Pan, Hello Fire. Then I thought, wow, I was on a roll. I decided to write Red Car, Long Legs, which is a story of what happened before I even moved to Dublin, Ireland. And that's the book we're going to cover today. Another memoir that I wrote was Dérivé. And this talks about being an expat or feeling like an expat in Trinidad and Tobago, my country of birth. Because I moved around for the past 25 years, living in different countries, every time I went back to my home country of Trinidad and Tobago, I felt like a tourist. And so this book is a collection of stories of going home to visit Trinidad, for various occasions, weddings, birthdays, You know, like when my dad passed away, carnival trips, taking foreign friends to visit, you know, like the Irish boyfriend or a Canadian friend, and all the jokes that happen along the way. So Drive is a collection of stories of feeling like a tourist in my own country of Trinidad and Tobago. So that was a great book to write. And then another one that I did, and one of the most recent, published in 2018, that's called Where Are My Car Keys? And this talks about my mother's journey with Alzheimer's disease. So over a 10-year period, we saw her slow demise. And as a form of healing, I wrote this book back in 2018 after my mom passed away. It was a good way for me to describe how our family felt over the years, what we saw during her journey with the disease. And I also did the illustrated kids book, Is That My Granny? So in the voice of one of my nephews, you know, we saw Granny, the Granny that he knew, disappear slowly. So this book I illustrated is my first kids book, and it talks about Granny's journey with Alzheimer's disease. So that's just a review of some of the books that I've published. So let's see who's here. Anne-Marie. Oh, great to see you. So thanks everyone for joining. Now, I'll just tell you a little bit about this book, Red Car Long Legs. I got a job in the fresh fruit and vegetable industry in California back in, it was January 1999. I had been working in Florida doing a postdoc research fellowship, and then when that was done, I had to apply for a job, and lo and behold, one came up in California. So this book talks about all the adventures of moving to the state of California from Florida. And I worked in the fresh fruit and vegetable industry, so adventures, you know, in visiting farms, not only in California, but also the company I worked for, Boscovich Farms. They had business in Central and Southern California, as well as Arizona, Mexico. So I worked with them for a while, and then I moved on to the Dole corporate office, which was also based in Southern California. And I worked in the with banana and pineapple growers in Central and South America. So I had to visit farms and plantations in these countries in Central and South America. So it was a lot of travel adventures, and I thought it would be great to encapsulate a lot of these adventures in a book. So I'll read the back of the book, the summary. Red Car Long Legs is a memoir of Jennylynd's life in California. This tell-all story of her trying to fit into the California mold with the right house, right clothes, and right friends parallels the American dream. While appearing to have everything, including a high-profile career with lots of exotic travel, she feels driven to find Mr. Right. Details of California dating and exploring the wilds of Latin America abound in this story of exploration and self-actualization. So this story talks about work, but it also talks about having fun in Southern California. And I had a lot of fun. So what I'm going to do is just read what it was like to go for the job interview at Boscovich Farms, and they're based in Oxnard, California. So that's how I start the book, because I'd never been to California, but lo and behold, I flew into Los Angeles and had to rent a car and find Oxnard, California. And I flew in like 10:30 p.m. and I'd never been to California before. So let me just read from the first chapter. A few months before my plane had touched down in the Los Angeles airport, I was scheduled for this job interview. It was my first time traveling to LA. I was fortunate to get an interview with a company based in Oxnard, California. All I had to do was rent a car and find my way to the motel located close to the main office. I planned to wake up early and arrive at 9 a.m. for my interview. I looked around the terminal to find the airport rental car service. And now, if anybody here knows LAX, the Los Angeles airport, it is huge. They have at least 7 terminals. So trying to navigate around LAX is crazy, especially for the first time and at night. Anyway, LAX has more terminals than any other US airport I've ever visited. I could not figure out which direction to turn. Eventually, I saw someone in uniform and asked for directions to Dollar Car Rental. He pointed at the sign that said car rental shuttles this way, and then he ran off. Rushing to the center island, I watched as one company van after the next arrived and left. As soon as one crowd gathered and boarded the vans, more people arrived. A group of 5 men with multiple tattoos and piercings gathered at the curb, cursing and swearing as they waited for their van. They reeked of stale beer and their eyes looked bloodshot. As the Dollar Car Rental van pulled up, to my disgust, they also boarded with me. I cracked the window slightly to get relief from the smell of alcohol and tried hard not to make eye contact because I felt a bit afraid and a little unsure of myself. The rental car offices were in fact located outside the massive airport and were not in walking distance. When we alighted from the van, the checkout line was a mile long. After 11 p.m., I finally got keys to my car and asked for a map of Southern California. The attendant showed me the best way to get to Highway 101. It was the highway that would take me to Oxnard. When I jumped into my car, the rowdy group of men shouted across the yard asking if I needed company. I stepped on the gas pedal and rushed out as swiftly as I could. I did not want them to follow me in their big cruiser and hoped they were going in a different direction. Being a bit paranoid, I checked my rearview mirror repeatedly. North on Sepulveda Boulevard and onto Highway 405. This highway was supposed to meet the 101. I turned on the light and looked at the map to be sure I was heading in the right direction. Now, in those days, there was no such thing as GPS. You used maps. All right, so I was good at reading maps, and these days I'm still good at reading maps. And at 11 p.m., I was trying to drive and look at the map at the same time. A bit dangerous, but that's what happens. Anyway, mounting the ramp onto 405, it was evident nobody would give me a chance to enter. This highway was said to host at least 400,000 vehicles a day. And so did Highway 101. The drivers were fast and furious. I sped up and still couldn't enter. Wonder if I would drive into a sidewall. A split second of clearing finally came, and I joined the speeding masses at 120 kilometers per hour on that freeway. There were no roadside lights, and bright lights from oncoming traffic was blinding. I had to stay alert, ignoring all thoughts of sleep and pushing my body into high gear. A cold sweat from nervousness broke out, and I cracked the window to let in some cool, fresh air. In 15 minutes, I saw a sign indicating an exit to the right for Highway 101. Again, it was a challenge to get to the right. Mad drivers were overtaking on the right side too. They left no space for folks like me to enter. As a car passed me, I dashed into the lane behind him, barely missing him by a hair. This caused distress for the car following him in hot pursuit. The driver behind me blew his horn long and hard. He was upset by my sudden move, and he let me know it. He then proceeded to drive as close as possible to my bumper, tailgating at 120 kilometers per hour on an unfamiliar highway. It made my heart race. I breathed a sigh of relief as soon as I got onto Highway 101. This momentary reprieve only to find the stunt would have to be repeated again and again, driving on that crazy highway. But that was just, it was just the introduction to LA driving. And I had to learn, living there, I lived there for about 6 years. I had to learn how to drive like a crazy person at 120 kilometers per hour on the freeway in Los Angeles. And it was one of the biggest freeways I'd ever driven on. 7 lanes, can you imagine? 7 lanes, okay? I'd never seen that before in life. How many of you have been to Los Angeles and have driven on Highway 405 or 101? Please tell me in the chat box. Anybody here? Anybody? Put a note in the chat box. Let me hear if you've driven on any of the crazy freeways in Los Angeles. Anybody? Anybody? Just put a message. Hi, Michelle. Glad to see you. Hi, Jill. Hi, Sachi. Hi, Philippa. Oh, Philippa's here. Thanks for coming. All right, so nobody's driven on the crazy highways in California. Well, I'll tell you, you have to have a strong heart to do it. Okay. Now, as I drove up the highway, I'll tell you some more adventures. I missed the exit to my hotel and had to retrace my steps and go back to find the hotel. So let's see, I'll tell you what happened after that. Retracing my drive, I got back to the slip road with the motel and entered the yard. One truck after the next could be seen parked in a row. This motel was probably a welcome rest stop for long-haul truck drivers. Several other vehicles entered the yard after me. I tried to find parking near the main office to check in. As I parked and came out, 2 truck drivers looked me over and whistled. I looked away, kept my head down, and swiftly removed my bag from the trunk. It was important to appear brave and bold in this situation. Even though I was falling apart inside, I locked the vehicle and bolted to the office to check in. Unfortunately, the office door was locked. It was 12:30 a.m. Hello, hello, is anyone here? I called out anxiously. I heard whistles in the background and saw 2 big truck drivers jump down from their rigs. After ringing the doorbell a few times, a sleepy-looking man emerged from the back office to open the door. I rushed in quickly, telling him about my one-night reservation. He searched the list, but he could not find my name. Come on, I wanted to say, but I had to calm down. Can you please check again? This reservation was made since last week. He looked again at the list. By that time, some other people had also entered the office and waited to get their keys to their room. I heard someone whisper behind me, "Oh, this is a fine-looking woman." Not wanting to turn around, I kept my composure, asked the attendant to check again. Eventually found the booking and gave me the key to room 10 located upstairs. I wished he had not yelled out my room number to everyone in the little office. After all, I did not want anyone following me upstairs. I grabbed my key and headed for the door. "Oh, this one's serious," said one in the group. As I whisked past, "Hello, darling," he said, but I didn't answer. Mounting the stairs, I was not sure which direction to turn, left or right. A lucky turn left brought me to room 10 down the open corridor. I tried the key and it would not go in. My hands were shaking and sweaty. I tried again and finally got the key in the lock. I heard footsteps as some loud people advanced up the staircase. The key had to be jiggled in the lock before the door finally opened. I ran swiftly into the room, locked the door, fastened the latch, and set my alarm clock for 7:30 before hastening to bed. Anyway, some of the misadventures of having to fly all over the place for interviews and stay at roadside motels and all that. That was just my introduction to California. So does anyone have any questions? Or somebody said they're driving on Highway 4. Oh, Roma, hi Roma, driving on Highway 401 now. Great job. Oh my goodness. Now, I'm going to let me take a little sip of tea. When I finally got the job, I decided that I was going to buy a house right away. Now, that's one question I wanted to ask people. If you've just moved to a place, would you buy right away or would you rent? So put your answers in the chat box there. I know my parents who were alive at the time, they say, no, don't buy anything. You don't know the place. So tell me what you would do if you moved to a new town. Would you buy a place right away or would you wait and see what it's like? Put your answers in the chat box. Anybody? I'm looking for some answers. Anybody? No? Well, anyway, I had to live in the same motel. I moved back to that motel because it had a little kitchenette, and so I would buy frozen dinners. Okay, Sachi said she'd wait and see what it's like. Gloria said she'd probably rent until you had enough dollars to buy. Okay, great answers. And probably wise. Well, the time I moved to California in January 1999, and I had the American dream. Michelle said she would rent to make sure she wanted to stay there. Okay, so those are all sensible answers, but I was not sensible in inverted commas, and I decided that I had to get into the American dream because I was living in America. And as soon as I moved to or got a job in Oxnard, I decided I was going to buy right away. So I stayed in a motel for almost 2 months until I could find a place in my budget. I had no budget. I didn't even have a down payment. So it's all in the book. Lots of jokes with home buying because I had no idea how to even buy a house. But I just knew I wanted one. And so what I could afford was a teeny tiny townhouse in Oxnard, California. So I'll tell you just an intro to that. During my first week in town, I decided to call a real estate agent whose mature face smiled back from a sign in front of a house. Sam was a tall, middle-aged, well-groomed gentleman with salt and pepper hair. During my lunch break one day, we met to view a 2-bedroom house in Oxnard. I told him about my recent move from Florida, about wanting to buy a house right away, and the fact that I was living in a motel. This first-time buyer, so I was in need of advice. The kindly gentleman took me under his wing and became an amazing resource for the weeks ahead. He may have felt sorry for me and became my substitute father. Sam set up an appointment to visit his friend Mike, who worked for a mortgage, brokerage, and escrow company. What's an escrow company? I asked. He knew I was totally green and had to become knowledgeable on home buying in a hurry. Mike's office was a one-stop shop for all home buyers' needs. He asked me to return with a job letter showing proof of salary, and the next day I was in Mike's office completing a host of application forms. You can't buy a home until you are pre-approved for a loan, he explained. We need to know how much you qualify for before you can go shopping. Mike completed the application for the mortgage loan, and in filling in my profile, he put white, male, U.S. citizen. I looked at him. I said, Mike, that's not correct. He told me, don't worry about it. I know what I'm doing. Just sign here. Your salary is high enough, so I know you can pay. It was a rude awakening for me about how the profiling of people for mortgage loans worked. I was on a work permit. I was a black woman. And I was on, an H1 visa. So not a U.S. citizen at all. I probably would never have qualified for mortgage loan at that time. So my guardian angel was at work helping me out. And that week, a photo and write-up about my joining the company had been published in several local newspapers and the produce industry newsletters. So this was a public relations program run by Boscovich Farms, the company where I worked, and Mike had seen all the local news articles. He knew my position was secure because it said so in the newspapers. So, what does everybody think about that? I got a mortgage loan right away, the first-time home buyer, because of what the mortgage broker put in the application. What do you all think about that? So that was 1999. Okay, isn't that fraud? Well, the mortgage brokerage wanted to know that I could pay the mortgage. They knew I had a fabulous job. The salary was high. And so, that's what they did. And I never missed a beat because, well, I had the money. Anyway, but it was interesting. And I was there telling him, no, don't do that. And he was like, yeah, I know what I'm doing. So, interesting time, I tell you. Now, I'm going to read a fun passage. When I worked for Boscovich Farms, they had growers in Southern California, Salinas Valley, Central California, and then also contract growers in Mexico. So San Luis, which is just south of Yuma, Arizona, and then also Baja California, which is south of California. And I was responsible for all the food safety programs on the farms and in the pack houses. So the first foreign trip down to Mexico, my boss went with me. And I'll tell you some of the misadventures on that first trip to Mexico. We drove down to Baja California from Oxnard. And to give you a reference, Oxnard is about 50 miles north of Los Angeles. Okay? So within a couple of hours, we were in Mexico, driving south. After passing San Diego, it was just a matter of time before we hit the Mexican border. We stopped to use the bathroom, got some food, and filled up the gas tank at a roadside convenience stop before the border. It was only then I realized I had not packed my passport. All I had was my driver's license in my wallet. As an American, it was usually easy to travel back and forth across the Mexican border. People of Mexican descent were searched or interrogated the most in case they were illegal immigrants without visas or work permits. I, however, at that time traveled on a Trinidad and Tobago passport. I was not American, and I needed to take my passport, which held my H-1B work visa and the stamp to show my reason for living in the United States. Bob, I don't have my passport with me, I said timidly. What? You don't have it? Oh my God. And we're almost at the border. He paused for a while, for a few seconds to recover from the initial shock. Then he said, you know what? We're going anyway. We'll just have to wave at them at the border crossing. I followed his lead. As we stopped at the Mexican border, the immigration inspector asked, Americans? Yes, we said. He stared at us. I gulped silently. My boss said, just going down for the day to Tijuana for shopping. The inspector waved at us and we continued driving. Many Americans went across the border to Tijuana to buy prescription drugs, which were cheaper than in the US. They also went for clothing, alcohol, and other consumer goods. It was a brisk business run daily at the border. The time was around 8:30 a.m. when we crossed, and I even saw Americans walking across the border to do their shopping. On a busy Friday morning, we did not create any suspicion or alarm, and we were just part of the daily crossing. Whew, said Bob, relieved as we were not asked to show anything. Jennylynd, you're putting us in an awkward position. We'll see what happens when we're driving back into the US. That's going to be interesting, he said. I was nervous about re-entering the US. If we met a stickler for details, they could detain me at the border for hours. Oh my God, what would happen to me? I had visions of being locked away in a room with other illegal immigrants. They could throw away the key and my family would never hear about me again. However, for the time being, I focused on the day ahead. We drove on the outskirts of Tijuana. The place looked a bit dirty and seedy as we passed, and I made a mental note to never visit over there for any reason. I was a little afraid of the desolation I saw on the outskirts of the city. We passed a few more towns on the way down, then went past Ensenada, where I heard some cruise ships from the United States would dock. Many party ships came down to Ensenada to take people binge drinking and shopping. We then took a small roadway heading inland. According to Bob, the owners of our company no longer drove to Baja California to visit the farms like they did in the past. There was a new fear of kidnappings. However, he said we had nothing to worry about because we were not wealthy landowners. I was still a little worried about our safety. There were not many road signs, but Bob knew where to drive. I was glad the company had not sent me on this expedition by myself. I would have been lost many times. As we turned a bend in the dirt road, we came to a roadblock. A bunch of youths with rifles peered at us and looked around at the back seat of the car. I almost wet myself with fear. Bob, however, appeared calm as usual. "Where are you going?" one of them asked in Spanish. Bob explained in perfect Spanish that we were visiting the ranch of Jefe Gonzalez in Mañadero. "Oh, really?" said the young man, and he stared at us. With that, Bob reached under the car seat and pulled out a wad of US cash and handed it to the spokesperson for the group. He smiled, showing a few rotten teeth, and signaled to his buddies to open the makeshift barrier. I could not even speak. The shock of the event, which happened in less than a minute, was reeling in my head, and I was shaken. But I tried to speak as we drove past some of the young men who were still staring at us suspiciously. "Don't worry, Jennylynd. I have things under control," said Bob, as he tried to calm me down. "You just have to give them a few dollars and they're fine. But they had big rifles, Bob. Oh my God, I was so scared. The shock took a few minutes to wear off, and I still couldn't understand the situation. Then Bob said, we may meet a few fellas like that again. So I have cash under the car seat, and I have a gun. So don't worry about anything. So can you imagine my first trip out on the job? And we had guns and US cash under the car seat and all that. Talk about adventure. Now people, tell me what you think about that. Oh yes, Michelle said Bob was prepared. Yes, he sure was. I was not prepared mentally, but he was prepared. And you know, it was my first couple of weeks on the job, so oh yeah, Corral said Bob's a rock star. He sure was, and always calm. He was always calm. I just couldn't understand it, but he was a good boss. Very, very good boss. I'll never forget when I first started. You know, he knew about planning and building and all that, but my portfolio was food safety. And he told me, I don't know what you're supposed to be doing, but just do it really well. So, and I did a good job because I like a boss like that. He said, take it away and do it well. He was an excellent boss. And so it was one of the best jobs I ever had. I was just busy up and down, traveling and enjoying the job, literally. Yes, so now let me tell you about one of the interesting people I met, because I had to make new friends. I didn't know anybody. So it was quite a feat to move to a new place, find a home, and make new friends, you know, starting from scratch. But Californians are really friendly, so you know, you just meet somebody, you start chatting with them, before you know it, friend for life. So I still have some of those California friends for life. I still know some of them from 1999, believe it or not. So anyway, there was one girl I met when I was looking for a daycare center for Tiffany. So I'll tell you about a story with her. In the book, I call her Dana. So Dana was telling me that she knew the secret to dating because, you know, I was recently divorced. I had a young child. I was young, so I wanted to meet a new partner. And Dana told me she had the secret to dating. And it was a book called The Rules. When Dana started telling me finally about the rules, it was quite late. She said, I have to lend you my book called The Rules. In fact, you must call up the Barnes & Noble store on Telegraph Road in Ventura and see if they have it. Buy your own damn copy. I was being ordered to buy a book that I knew nothing about. It must have been an extra important document. I didn't mind getting the book if it would help me. Dana said, this book is the Bible for relationships. It was written by these two women who wrote down all the time-tested rules to trap a man. Ha ha ha, she laughed hysterically at the thought of trapping a man. I was about to ask her why she was single if she knew the rules so well. She must have been reading my mind, because then she went on to describe all the characters she had worked the rules on. Dana explained that I had to dress up and look beautiful at all times, even when going to the supermarket. Speaking to a man first or staring at him was forbidden, even if I liked him. I was never to pay on a date. I said, but suppose the man asked me to split the bill. She said, never do it. He should be paying for the pleasure of your company. And never see him too often when you first start dating. Oh my gosh, I saw George almost every day when we had our little relationship, I confessed. You see, she told me, that was your problem. What problem, I asked. She said, he got tired of you. If you had taken the relationship slowly and played your cards right, you would be married in 8 weeks. You would still have him. He would have asked you to marry him. Oh my gosh, I felt like crying at that point for my folly of not knowing the rules. I had let George slip out of the palm of my hands. Did she ever stop to think that George had attachment issues? Not just with me, but with anyone. For Dana, being married was very important. She expressed this idea repeatedly to me, so much so that I was beginning to believe that I was supposed to be married. I was slowly being transformed into a believer of the rules. If a woman wasn't married, she was nothing. Dana continued to explain the rules to me. Never accept a last-minute invitation for a date. If a man is serious, he will ask you well in advance to go out with him on the weekend. Yikes, how late is late, Dana? I asked. Girl, you will really have to get your copy of the rules and study it very well. You don't know anything. I've read mine at least 20 times, she boasted. You have to find some men and practice the rules on them, she said. It was a big challenge for me to find some men and practice the rules on them. How was I going to do that? The following evening, I went to Barnes & Noble after work. I was frantic to get my hands on a copy of the Dating Bible. I ran to the associate at the front desk. Hello, do you sell the rules? He looked calmly at the deranged woman in front of him. Ma'am, I'm not sure what you're talking about. Do you know the name of the author? Of course not. Why would I know the name of the author? It had never entered my head to verify this with my dating advisor. Just look at the catalog on your computer, I said. It's all about dating. I'm sure you have it there. He looked for a few moments as I inhaled deeply, trying to maintain my composure. Yes, I found them, written by Ellen Fine and Sherry Schneider. Which copy do you want to buy? The Rules Part 1 or the Rules Part 2? He asked. You mean there's a Part 2? You gotta be kidding, right? Dana didn't tell me that. Yes, ma'am, there are 2 versions, he said. Okay, give me both of them. A girl can't be too prepared. So, please tell me, listeners, what you think about that story of the rules. Have you all heard about that book? I was being schooled by a professional dater. She knew all the secrets of the rules. What do you all think about that book? Or have you even read it or heard about it? Anybody's heard about the rules? The time-tested methods for dating. Anybody's heard about it? Yes, you have to get your copy Part 1 and Part 2. Well, now this was 1999. I'm sure they have Part 3 and 4 by this time. But anyway, I put a copy of the link in my description box there. So if you want to find out more about the books. And so I'm going to read one more passage for you, some adventures in Peru. Because I had traveled to Honduras, Ecuador, Peru, Costa Rica, several different countries to visit banana and pineapple plantations. And I'm going to read about one adventure in Peru. Now, I was supposed to go to Piura, which was in the north of Peru. And I made a detour for about 3 days to Cusco, the Inca capital up in the Andes. My boss didn't know where I was at the time. But I disappeared, went to Cusco and Machu Picchu. So I'll tell you about one adventure I had. Because of the altitude, you're not supposed to walk about too much on your first day because you get altitude sickness. You know, it's quite high up in the air. And I was told to rest when I first got there, but I'd never follow instructions. So I went walking around on the first day, and this is what happened. Please give me a chair, somebody. Please, una silla, por favor, I yelled. I was about to collapse as the space revolved around me. A man saw my distress and brought me a chair. It must have been a common sight, collapsing tourists suffering from altitude sickness. I sat there for a while and watched the world spin as I caught my breath, what little was available. You okay, lady? He asked. Yes, I'll be fine, thank you, I said, gasping for breath. After about 15 minutes, I felt strong enough to move. However, I was also a bit hungry. It was a long time since dinner the night before. I walked to the nearest restaurant, which was 2 doors down from the market, and sat down again. The place was empty, but they were open for business. I ordered a light soup. It was all my stomach could take, and I chatted a little with the waiters. While we were there, he suggested I rest. Why were everyone was telling me to rest and rest and rest? As I finished my soup, an indigenous woman walked in from the street and spoke loudly with all the waiters. She also greeted me vociferously. She carried a tray covered with a white cloth. The waiters started motioning to me to taste something. Cooey, cooey, they said in chorus. What? I had no idea what they were talking about. Everyone knew I was visiting from America. Cooey, cooey, they said again. Trátalo. Just then, the woman removed the white cloth to reveal what looked like 6 big barbecued rats. Their eyes and teeth were looking at me. Cooey! They motioned for me to try it. No gracias, no gracias, nada para mí, I said. I was not going to taste the ugly-looking critters, not for love, no money. She did not accept no for an answer. The woman took her grubby fingers with the nails that were full of dirt, broke off a piece for me to taste. By this time, all the waiters in the restaurant were at my table looking with delight and egging me on. Trátalo, trátalo. So I looked at her fingernails and remembered all the food safety practices I was preaching to people on the farms. Wasn't I in Peru to do inspections of farms? If the altitude sickness didn't get me, the cooey or her dirty fingernails would certainly finish me off. So to find out what happened next, please get a copy of my book, Red Car Long Legs, Adventures in California and Beyond. You need to know what happened with that cooey and other delights that I decided to eat while traveling in Latin America. It was actually roast guinea pig, and that is a delicacy in the Andes. Everybody eats cooey. So we've almost come to the end of my presentation, which ends, let's see. Oh, we have a few minutes for questions and answers. So tell me, has anybody ever tried cuy? Anybody? Anybody ever tried alpaca? That was another thing I tried in in Peru, because you know they have the llamas and the alpacas. And one time I went into a restaurant one of the nights in Cusco, and I told the waiter, bring me something I've never had before. What would you recommend? And he said alpaca steak. So I said, okay, I'll try anything once. And when he put this meat in front of me, the smell was gamey. I mean, it was like, woof, blow you away smell. So it was interesting, and I do describe that in the book. So alpaca steak was one of those, and pisco sour, which was an alcoholic drink. But if you're interested, the first 10 people to subscribe on my website, I put the link there, you'll get a free electronic copy of Red Car Long Legs. So first 10 people to register on my website, right? JennylyndJames.com books. You can get a free ebook just by registering on the website. Oh, hi, Philippa. Yes, I had so many adventures. We just can't cover all of them in 1 hour, but it's a fascinating read. So you can get a hard copy from me. You can order a copy on the website, or if you're one of the first 10 to register or subscribe on my website, you get a free ebook. Working for Dole was amazing. And if we had another hour for a presentation, I would tell you, about the end. I left for Ireland after that, So the last chapter in the book talks about packing up and moving to Ireland, which is a whole chapter because it was fascinating. Daphne, are you still on board? Let's see. Is Daphne still here? I know Daphne had signed in from Dublin. It's really late in Dublin. I'm not sure if she's still with us. Anybody has any questions, any more questions or comments? Just want to say thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. So great to have all of you here. Any other questions or comments? So Red Car Long Legs, Adventures in California and Beyond. One of the most exciting times of my life. Yes, as I say again, you can, first 10 subscribers to the website, you can get a free copy of Red Car, an electronic copy of Red Car Long Legs. Any more questions for me or comments? Yeah, oh, I forgot to mention that I even visited Hawaii, because Dole started in Hawaii with the pineapple plantations. So I got to go to Hawaii once and visit the plantation. Most of them were not functioning anymore, but they have a huge gift shop. So we got lots of pineapple merchandise, t-shirts, hats, pens, bags, you name it. Thank you so much, everybody, for signing on this afternoon. Hope you enjoyed my presentation. I enjoy the storytelling, and we'll certainly do it again sometime. I have a new book that I'm working on, a fictional novel, and I do talk about the rules in it, the rules of dating, as well as some other dating adventures. So that's a new book that I'm working on. It's fiction. And we had quite a few people on my Facebook page voting on titles and images and all that. Anne Marie, well, thank you so much for joining. It was great to have you too. Thanks, KWY Bonify. You have your wine. I wish I had some wine too, but I have rum punch. After this, I'll have a little sip of rum punch just to calm the throat. Oh, yes. Any other questions or comments? Let's see. Oh, one thing I tried when I was in Costa Rica, which is the head office for Dole. I had run away when we had an afternoon break from meetings, and I went zip lining. Now, at that time, let's see, that was around year 2002. They call it the Cloud Forest Adventure. So that is another really funny part of the book. You have to read that section because you would laugh. It was hysterical. Michelle Fred, oh, thank you for joining, Michelle. So happy you could join this afternoon. Yeah. So, in a couple of weeks, I want to read a few passages from Mrs. Somebody, which is my new book that's coming up. And I also am going to read from Drivé for all the Trinis. I have a lot of jokes going back to Trinidad with foreign friends and cars stolen in the bush and all sorts of crazy situations. So look out for when we do the book reading of Drivé. Let's see, who else is there? So we have some people who can't comment. I don't think they have Facebook, but that's okay. Well, good to see all of you this afternoon. Who follows the rules? I know I was outlining some of the points in the story about following the rules, and I had one friend in California who was quite religious about it. Any of the ladies on the feed here? Have you ever tried following the rules of dating? Okay, well, we are going to end it there for today. Again, thank you so much for joining me, and hope to see you at the next live book reading session. Bye-bye, everybody. Cheers. See you next time. Okay, bye.